Welcome, Pleasantly Middle School. Today we're going to be working with combining like terms and the distributive property using expressions. Our first slide just talks about different vocabulary words. So our first idea are just terms. What are terms in this expression? An expression does not have an equal sign. In other words, 3x minus 5 plus 2x minus x is considered to be an expression, not an equation, because we don't see equal sign. The first word says term. So if we're talking about terms, we're simply saying 3x, negative 5, positive 2x, and negative x. Those are all considered terms. So if I said how many terms are in this expression, you would tell me 4. Like terms, of course, are those terms that are alike. And so I see that I have a 3x, I have a positive 2x, and over here I have a negative x. So those would be like terms. Coefficients are numbers in front of the variable. So a coefficient would be 3, 2, and then this would be a negative 1. If I don't see a number in front of a variable, we know that that just represents 1. In this case, it's a negative x, so that is a negative 1. Constants are numbers that don't have letters. So a negative 5, that, my friends, would be the constant. Anything that I'm writing down on the notes, you should be writing down as well, or just making a mental note as we go along. But if I write it down, or if you see the print, then you need to write it down as well. That will do it for this particular slide. Check your progress. Now you would want to do this on your own. So if you could pause the video for a minute and then try to select the correct answer. Once you finish, then start the video. You're supposed to identify the term, the like terms, coefficients, and constants in this expression. So go ahead and pause the video and then start it back up when you know the right answer. Welcome back. You should have selected B as in boy. This one tells us the terms, which are 6x, negative 2x, and negative 4x. As far as the like terms would be 6x, positive x, negative 4x. The coefficients are 6, 1, and negative 4. Remember, a coefficient is just the number in front of the variable. That's going to be a really important vocabulary word. You're going to hear that a ton throughout this unit. And then the last one is a constant. Just remember that a constant is a number without a letter. So if you chose B, give yourself a pat on the back. Good job. If you did not, then better luck next time. The next slide you're looking at is simplify the expression 6n minus n. The first thing I have to ask myself is, are these terms alike? As I can see, they are. I have an n and I have an n. So one way to look at it would be 6 nickels minus, of course, this is 1 nickel. Don't forget that there is a number in front of it. 6n minus 1n is just 5n. And that's all I can do. That we just simplified the expression. Make sure you write that down in your notes. Our next example is 7n plus n. 7n, 7 nickels plus 1 nickel. Don't forget that there is a 1. It's kind of hiding. You don't see it, but it is there. And that's going to give us 8n. Make sure you write down 8n. And then that, of course, is selection B. Simplify. This one's a little bit more challenging. We've got more terms. I'm going to use a method that I like to use, just using symbols. I'm going to use 8z. I'm just going to use a circle. I want to make sure that I include this positive z. That's really important. And at the same time, I'm going to go ahead and add a 1 because I know that there's a number that's with that z, and then negative 9z. As far as, and there aren't any other letters, but I see constants. Constants are numbers without letters. So I'm just going to put boxes around those. So I just chose a symbol. I just thought I would use a circle for the z's. I'm going to use a box or a square for the constants, but of course you can interchange those as long as you're keeping the same symbol with the same like term. I know that 8 plus 1 is 9, and 9 minus 9, ooh, that's going to be a 0z. Well, what happens when I have 0 zebras? We'll talk about that in just a second. And then with the constants, I've got a negative 5 and I've got a positive 2. Negative 5 and positive 2 is going to give me a negative 3. So if that's the case, 0z isn't like z. Remember, that was 1z. 0z really just kind of goes away. Then all that's left is negative 3, and that is my final answer. So all of that work just to get a negative 3, my z's went away. And what I showed you is all you have to show on your work in your homework and on the slideshow. Why don't you go ahead and pause the video, and once you have come up with the answer, start it up and see what you came up with. You may have guessed it. Welcome back. The final answer should be A. All that's left is negative z. When I add 6z plus 1z, that's a 7z. 7z minus 8z is a negative 1z. As far as the constants, negative 2 and positive 2, well, those are just going to cancel or give me a 0. So all that's left is negative 1z, better known as just negative z. The 1 isn't necessary for a final answer. All right, you should be on the back of your PowerPoint, and I'm just going to write these slides out for you. The first expression is 3x minus 2y plus 4x minus y minus 6v. So this is the first example that we've seen where we've got 3 different variables. So I'm going to go ahead and I'll use a circle for 3x, and I'm going to find another x. I see one right here. Then I'm going to switch up my symbols. I'll just use a box for the y's. Notice that I'm including the negative with the 2y. That's very important. And then this is a negative y. I'm going to go ahead and add a 1. And then the last one is a negative 6v. So I'm going to use a different symbol. I'll just use a cloud this time. So when we are simplifying expressions, we also want to think about alphabetical order. I know that 3 and 4, that's the coefficient. That's what I'm going to add together. 3 plus 4 is 7. And then, of course, I want to include the x. Now I want to look at the y's. I've got a negative 2 and I've got a negative 1. I'm 2 in the whole. I'm 1 more in the whole. That's going to give me negative 3y. And then all that's left is v. And I guess if I was doing this in alphabetical order, it should be negative 6v, positive 7x, and negative 3y. It isn't wrong if you don't put it in alphabetical order, but it's just better if you do. So this is our best final answer. Now moving on to something that's a little different. This is using the distributive property. And we've talked about the distributive property this year. We've had to use a distributive property when we were using order of operations. I know that the first thing that I should do is what's in parentheses. And when I look at these parentheses, I see terms that can easily be combined. I see an x, which, again, that's a 1x. I'm going to go ahead and circle that. And then I have a positive 3x. Once again, I'm going to go ahead and circle that. And then I've got a couple of constants. I've got a 10, and I've got a negative 5. So order of operations tells me to do what's in parentheses first. So if I can simplify, I want to do that first. So we're going to do 1x plus 3x, leave it inside the parentheses, and then combine the constants. So that's really just 10 minus 5, which is a positive 5. Once again, leave that inside parentheses, and then just bring the 9 down. Then I can distribute. The distributive property is very generous. It wants to pass itself out to every term. And I know that when I have a number outside of parentheses, that represents multiplication. So then it's going to be 36x, and then 9 times 5 is positive 45. Make sure that you do distribute to not only the 4x, but also to the 5. From here, this is time to stop. I cannot combine an x with just a constant, so that is our final answer, 36x plus 45. Now, just kind of on a side note, if you for some reason forgot to simplify to begin with, then you could distribute the 9 to each term and then add those together. The bad part about that is you're going to be dealing with numbers that are larger than what you would have if you had just simplified to begin with. But just to let you know, you would end up with exactly the same answer. I think that it's a better idea for you to simplify the parentheses and then do the distributive property. But you can try it both ways if you just want to check your work. The last problem, the first thing I want to do is check out my parentheses. I know that I have a 5m and I have a positive m. I'm going to go ahead and add the 1. I don't want to forget that there is a coefficient there in front of the variable. The coefficient, again, is the number. So that's going to give me a 6m. The only thing that's left inside the parentheses besides that is just a negative 7. Now I'm going to bring down the negative 4, and you may have guessed it, I need to get rid of the parentheses. I know that there's nothing else I can simplify within the parentheses, so now I just distribute the negative 4. I end up with negative 24m. A negative times a negative is a positive, so that gives me a positive 28. And that's going to do it for distributive property and combining like terms. I hope you enjoyed this lesson.